Photography. Understanding a camera's function and how to properly expose a photo is key to starting off in photography. Of course, if you're still stuck on program, it's okay. Here are the 3 important settings you need to learn in manual to get out of program. To start off, what is manual on the camera? It may seem scary, but all manual is a setting where the photographer has complete control over exposure, manually adjusting the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, rather than relying on automatic camera settings. For beginners, not much touch this setting, they stay on program, a semi-automatic shooting mode where the camera automatically determines the optimal aperture and shutter speed for exposure, similar to full auto mode. However, unlike full auto, it provides the photographer with control over other settings like ISO, flash, and white balance. The problem with program is it does not allow you to expand full creativity in the camera's body, such as panning, slow synchro, and more. The first setting I will cover is shutter speed. Shutter speed is the easiest setting to understand as long as you don't overcomplicate it. Shutter speed, or how fast the shutter closes, is the length of time a camera's shutter remains open, allowing light to strike the sensor and determining how motion is captured. In simpler terms, how long you open the curtains for. Let's say you have a dark room and 1 pair of curtains, you open that curtain for 1 whole second, you let in only so much light to the dark space. Now let's say you're in a bright room on a sunny day, and you open the curtain to more light. This will lead to an abundance of light, overexposing the image due to the amount of light hitting the sensor. However, it is key to remember that the numbers don't only indicate how much light is let in, it can impact the picture in certain ways. The smaller the number, the shakier your photo will be, almost like a blur. Always use a tripod if you want still photos in dark situations when you set your shutter speed lower than 1/66th of a second. Faster shutter speeds let in less light for more brighter days or sports photography. It is also used to freeze motion by capturing the photo in perfect frozen motion. Once you understand shutter speed, you will be able to do cool photo techniques like slowing the shutter and creating panning photos or slow shutter speed photos. But if we want to take a panning photo in the morning, how is this possible if we are allowing too much light on a sunny day without overexploding? This leads us to aperture. Aperture. A little bit less complicated than shutter speed. Aperture is the adjustable opening within a camera lens similar to the pupil of an eye that controls the amount of light reaching the image sensor. It is measured in what we call f-stops. A lower f number indicates a wider opening, while a higher f number indicates a narrower opening. People sometimes find it confusing as why a large aperture is f1.8. Shouldn't it be f20? It's weird, but don't overcomplicate it. A camera lens that's f-stop is f2 allows for way more light to be let in, also making that beautiful blurry background while isolating the subject. A smaller f-stop like f22 allows for almost everything to be in focus but lets in far less light as the aperture hole is much tinier. So how does shutter speed and aperture apply? Well, let's look back at what I said previously. In this scenario, let's say you want to create a panning photo on a sunny day. You set your shutter speed to 160, but all of a sudden you see an overexposure in the image. Making your aperture into a smaller aperture like f11 to f18 will let in less light, which can help balance out the image. Vice versa. If you're trying to capture a slightly moving subject in a somewhat dark room, set your shutter speed to 160 to capture as much light and set your f-stop to f2 to f8. Just be aware to focus on the subject well to avoid blurriness in the photo. ISO, finally, ISO, or International Organization for Standardization. ISO is simply the sensor's sensitivity to light, directly affecting image brightness and quality. Now, what does this setting do? It allows you to finally add in any extra light if all fails. For example, let's say you're in a dark situation like a football game. You want to capture a frozen motion shot of a footballer. You set your shutter to 1/250th to 1/500th, aperture to f4, but you're still underexposed. Now what? You are able to raise the ISO to a higher number to make the sensor more sensitive to light, starting from 100 and ranging up to 24,000. However, the higher the ISO, the more quality you lose as your photos become noisy or grainy. This isn't an issue though, as many editing softwares are advanced and can denoise as much as they can without losing too much detail. Now, how do all 3 apply? Easy. We call these 3 the exposure triangle. Let's do an example. Again, you're in a dark room, but don't want a blurry photo and just want a normal set photo portrait in a somewhat dim room with no tripod. You set your shutter speed to 100 and aperture to f4, but still can't seem to nail it. You can now set your final resort, raising the ISO just enough to get a good exposure without too much grain. And there you have it. And of course, remember, you can always edit the photo's brightness and exposure, etc. using apps like Lightroom or Photoshop, Photopea, and much more.